Welcome to Beyond the Frontline podcast, where your host, U.S. Air Force veteran Donna Hoffmeyer, will help you transition from the front line to the home front. Listen every other Wednesday as we'll bring great conversations, resources, tips, and feel-good stories that will resonate and relate. Now, here's your host, Donna Hoffmeyer.
Hey everyone, it's Donna, and we're back for another episode of Beyond the Frontline. And let me tell you, we are going to talk about home ownership. And it's definitely an interesting time to talk about it because, interest rates have been through the roof. They're higher than they've ever been. I think they're starting to come down again, but definitely more than they were, 3-4 years ago. And it's hard. It's really hard to get into home ownership. And then it's also hard to rent because rent is through the roof. And you hear this saying, your dollars are going out the door if you're renting. So I have bought a house a couple times, and I know what kind of ass pain it is, to be honest, and the struggle it's been. But I also know the difference of when I had like a really good realtor that knew their stuff and then somebody that didn't. I've had both experiences. So interestingly, I'm always out and about and have my fingers in lots of different things. And I just happened to be with Coming Home Well, and we were at the Hero Stock concert in Tennessee back in August. And we had a table set up, and we were telling everybody about Coming Home Well and the radio station and all our podcasts. And sitting right next to us was this very lovely lady named Elizabeth Long. And over time, we just started talking, and I found out that Elizabeth is a realtor. And I know lots and lots of realtors, but as I talked with her, Elizabeth was a little bit different. She really, really knows her stuff, and she was really invested into the well-being of special populations with a high focus on veterans, but also like first responders and teachers. But we started talking about veterans, and as I kept talking to her, I was like, wow, she's really different. Like, she really has a passion about teaching veterans. So it kind of led me to say, hey, you want to do a podcast? And she was like, yes, I think we should. And so we are here today. And so I want to introduce you because she actually is just a very unique person. And her background, zoologist, other carpenter, along with being a realtor and a huge patriot veteran advocate. She works for Exit Realty, and her business is called Fidelis Homes Tennessee. And all her background has really led her up to what she does today. So, Elizabeth, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I just think, I was really fascinated when we started talking about houses and real estate and veterans, because honestly, to me, I'm like, oh Lord, I don't really want to talk about that. We bought the house, we have the house, I don't want to deal with it.
Right.
And that's kind of the end of it. But as you and I kept talking, I was like, wow, she's different. Like, it was education first, everything else second. So let's talk about a little of your background first, because I just thought this was fascinating. You're a zoologist.
Yeah, so I have a zoology degree from Ohio State. I grew up in Ohio. And while I was getting my degree, I also worked at the Columbus Zoo. So I worked in the education department, taking care of all the education program animals that we had. I originally thought I was going to go into veterinary science.
Well, I was wondering how you went from zoology or zoologist to real estate.
Yeah, there's a few steps in between there, for sure. Everybody needs a home, though.
Well, what took your steps from from zoologist to real estate? What were the kind of the big hops there?
Yeah, so originally thought I was going to be a veterinarian. And then when I discovered how much chemistry I was going to have to take, I was not a fan of chemistry. I really liked organic.
Oh.
Yeah, I really liked organic chemistry, but any of the other ones, no, completely hated it. And so I kind of changed, my thought process there. And actually, a lot of veterinary students or pre-vet students end up going the just medical route because veterinary school is so difficult.
Wow.
Yeah,
You wouldn't
because
think so,
there's so
'cause
many different
animals.
animal physiologies, and there's essentially one human physiology, though everybody's different, but you know you compound that into so many different kinds of animals, and it gets very, very difficult. Then I got my education degree because I thought, okay, I do like to teach, I do like to educate, so I got my education degree, and I ended up combining those two degrees and worked at a zoo in Tampa, Florida, called the Lowry Park Zoo. I co-managed that education department there for 3 years, and so I combined my love of animals in the environment and teaching by managing the education department there, and then decided I didn't like Tampa, moved back up to Tennessee where my then fiance was, and got a job at the Nashville Zoo. And so I managed the education department at the Nashville Zoo for 3 years before I had my daughter. And so that was awesome. So when I had my daughter, I stayed home. Had her, then my son 5 years later. And so I was a stay-at-home mom for about 10 years. And when my son went into kindergarten, I decided, okay, I need to do something for myself. And about that same time is when all those HGTV channels started coming out about, flipping houses and building your own stuff and everything. And I'm like, that looks a lot of fun. I'm going to learn how to do that. So I met an interior designer who works out of Nolensville, and she was starting her business. So we decided to collaborate. And at first I thought, well, I'll just do kind of little handyman sort of things, in people's homes that they need to have done. Maybe they feel more comfortable with a woman in the house if they're a stay-at-home mom as opposed to a man. I don't know. I thought, okay, we'll give this a try. But very quickly, they wanted barn doors and built-in and kitchen islands and solid wood tables and the big stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I'll learn how to make that. So I got books and again, YouTube. I mean, you can learn everything on YouTube practically.
I agree. But all the time, all these like, Mom, did you see this and that? It's like all education stuff. I'm like, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. So I learned how to make all that stuff. I completely took over a 2-car garage, much to the chagrin of my husband, and got sawdust absolutely everywhere.
Wow. And then did you kind of slid into real estate after that?
I did. Yeah. So my husband and I just started talking about, okay, how can I, at this point, both kids are doing well. So I can again kind of focus on something. How can I help my husband maybe retire a little bit earlier?
And he in?
He works at Enterprise.
But was
and he's in fleet management.
What branch of service was he in?
Oh, he was not in the service, but his father was in the Army,
Okay.
Armored Cavalry, and his grandfather flew 32 missions in World War II.
Oh, wow.
And his uncle was a boom operator.
Wow.
Yeah. And my grandfather was a Marine. My uncle was a Marine.
So it's all around. I mean, you've got yeah. So there's interest there, right? Because you have this.
Absolutely.
Real estate.
Yeah. So real estate, we started talking about real estate. I mean, everybody knows real estate is normally a pretty good investment. And we had some friends who had some rental properties. So I was like, okay, I'll go get my real estate license. So I did. And once I got my real estate license, I wanted to have a niche. It's important to have a niche in real estate. Yeah. And also just for me personally, I need a passion to work with because I'm not a natural salesperson. And so I came across Homes for Heroes in some of that research. And that's a national organization developed after 9/11. To support veterans and first responders and teachers in a way to give back. So I thought, all right, this makes sense. It's a lot of money that I give back to Homes for Heroes, but it made sense for me because that was just kind of part of my whole drive, was to give back anyway. through real estate. So I became a Homes for Heroes realtor. And what that means is when a client works with me, either buying or selling, they get a thank you check back after closing, just as a thank you for their service. And yeah, just a really awesome group of people to hang out with and talk with. And so it just kind of came naturally to dive into the veteran community.
Wow.
So I met a fantastic guy. His name's Andrew Farrer. He is currently District 5 commander
Mhm.
in Tennessee here. And he is just connected to absolutely everybody. And so I met with him, and he has an enormous amount of energy and drive for the veteran community. So we just brainstormed a whole bunch of things together. But one of them was to develop a digital magazine for a post in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, to be able to spread the word about resources and events and things going on in the military community and the VFW. So I started volunteering and creating that digital magazine.
Oh, how awesome. How
Yeah.
awesome. So it's interesting, like for the audience, I know we took the long route around, but we did that with intention though. I wanted you guys to see this for a myriad of reasons. One of them is that you can just see that she's very driven to learn and figure things out and do the best for her clients, no matter what that is. And that's a lot of how veterans are. Like, we're just going to figure it out. Like, no problem. There's no figure this out. So you already kind of have that mindset. But two, to show people that you can reinvent yourself many, many times and be fine, you know? And that three, out of that, your skill set comes all the way across that. So even skill set that you had in zoology probably somewhere along the way translates to what you're doing now, because all the education you did in managing and running stuff and organizing and yada yada, and you take all those soft skills and run them all the way over here, plus your family has an enormous background in the military. You are passionate about that. You found a calling in that. You connected to that. And then boom, here you are working in your own real estate business with all of that behind you, right? So it just, me, it makes you like way more credible. You know, I mean, I've talked to people, I literally talked to somebody that asked me, Donna, why do you do your podcast? Like, what's the goal of your podcast? And I'm like, it's to give resources to veterans, and we do that in a myriad of ways. We talk to all these people and we learn about it. It's great. And then I said, what's yours? And he's like, make money.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay, now, is it wrong? It's not wrong.
Right.
It's really flat.
Right. Yeah.
Somebody
I
that I'm
mean,
going to get excited to go run to, like, not really. It doesn't excite me. Like, okay, well, you could do that anywhere. It excites me when somebody is like, hey, I am very interested in learning about all this and finding, like you said, the minute details to give to a specific population, in our case, the veterans, you know, and Homes for Heroes is veterans, first responders, teachers. And we decided, you and I have talked about this, like we were going to zero in on the veterans because we do have unique services that the other areas do not, you know. And a lot of veterans don't necessarily know that. It's not, you know, we kind of titled this, you know, the top realtor secrets that veterans need to know about home ownership. But you said, you're like, it's technically not secrets. It's just not out there. It's not
absolutely.
well enough. And it's not until you get into the weeds that you may or may not find out about it if you have a really good realtor. So as we had this conversation over that whole day hanging out, Doc, that was what we decided to do, is like, well, let's just bring them up, right? And let's just put there and give these tips to the veterans. So that's what we're going to do. After
yes,
we now know the background, how we led up to it, but Elizabeth has taken the time to go through and just bring out these quote unquote secrets that the veterans really need to understand about homeownership. And if anything, is going to allow the veterans to be more educated to know what questions to ask the realtor and to be able to assess if they know or they don't know. So y'all need to hear this over and over, download it, write notes, whatever you need to do. Email us if you want more, the transcript, whatever. But you need to take these tips if you're looking to buy a home so you're educated and so you know what to ask when it comes. Now, we also know, Elizabeth, that every state probably has some little nuance within it, and we do understand that. But these are kind of the big things that are dealt with VA loans across the board.
Yeah, very important to have a realtor who you know, like, and trust, and that knows about the VA loan and some of the things to look for when you're looking at homes, and just kind of keep in mind, okay, we need to consider X, Y, and Z about this house because it might not pass. So, for example, a lot of houses have wood railings or wood decks. And, you know, if there's even just like a rotted piece of board, that can be a problem during the appraisal process. So just little things like that, you know, a typical homeowner might not even think about, might even notice. Those are not things that will prevent the loan from going through or from purchasing the house. It's just one of those little minute details that a realtor who knows about the VA loan process and the appraisal can communicate with the lender so that they work together in making sure that that is taken care of on the front end before an appraisal is done. And then you don't end up having the appraisal come through and the appraiser says, oh, you got to fix this. And then you got to come back and then you got to have to pay for a second appraisal. Right. So that's even more money out of their pocket. So little things like that. And working with a lender who knows about the VA loan. I mean, there's so many people that I have talked to who say they've worked with a lender who said, no, you can't buy that. No, that won't work. It just won't work. Basically, it comes down to they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with the quote unquote difficulties of the VA loan, which they're really not difficulties. They're just certain guidelines and requirements so that the veteran is getting into a safe home that puts them in a better position. So understanding VA loans, there's a lot of myths and misunderstandings about them from everybody. First of all, I think it's only 13% of veterans actually use the VA loan, which is insane to me. Yeah. You know, y'all worked for that. You deserve that benefit. And the fact there's only 13% that have ever used their VA loan benefit tells me that there's a whole lot more education that needs to be done. Like, get the word out about the VA loan and that, yeah, you should be using it. So not only are there misunderstandings on maybe some lenders' parts, but on just the veterans themselves too. They kind of hear, I don't know, through the grapevine, oh, it's just, you know, it's just a pain. There's so much red tape, or you have to deal with all this kind of stuff. And it's really not that difficult. And so they're losing out on this great benefit that they could have. And there's 20 million veterans in the United States, and only 13% are using it. That's just crazy. So one of the biggest benefits is that you don't have to have any down payment. There's no down payment requirement. That's huge. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. Comparatively to what's the average? Is it 20% down you have to have, or what's the, depends on the...
Yeah, there's so many different types of loan products out there now. It used to be, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago, where it was the standard, you know, that you had to put 20% down. There's a lot of other loan products out there now where you don't have to put nearly that much. But for the VA loan, there's zero requirement
And even
for down payment.
$1,000 saved is, you know what I mean?
Yes.
$10,000
Yeah.
saved. I mean, it's saved.
Any amount saved is fantastic.
Right.
There is a funding fee. That's how the VA loans are funded and backed, but that varies based on your like service and loan type that they're using.
Right.
And also if you have 10% or more disability rating, you don't pay that funding fee. So that covers probably most.
Right.
That's because it's just 10%.
So don't listen to your friends. If they had a bad experience, go find out for yourself.
Yes, go find out for yourself. Yeah, you can ask the seller to pay for some of your fees when you're, closing costs and fees. That's a benefit because, there's some fees that veterans are just not allowed to pay. The VA says, nope, we're not going to allow our veterans to pay termite inspection, for example.
Yeah.
They can now. Yeah. Now with the new NAR settlement, that's kind of put a monkey wrench in all kinds of things, and has forced the VA to kind of come up with some revamped kind of guidelines. So it used to be that veterans could not pay for their realtors commission or compensation at all. That's changed a little bit with this new NAR settlement. And so, they can work that into the loan, but that's between the client and the realtor. So another important thing to mention is the percentage. Let's say the typical compensation for a realtor in our area is 3%.
Mm-hmm.
That's typical. It is always negotiable. Right. And that's a very important thing for everybody, veterans and civilians, to know that compensation is negotiable. You need to have a conversation with your realtor about what their services are and what you are willing to pay.
And just for the audience, and I know about the NAR settlement, but do you want to just a quick summary of what the NAR settlement said? What happened? Is there a way to quickly summarize it?
Right. Let's see. In a nutshell. So yeah, basically there needs to be more conversation and communication between realtors and their clients, and between realtors and other realtors. Is essentially what it boils down to.
So my understanding, tell me if I was wrong, but the percentage, the commission percentage to the realtors was always negotiable. However, it was presented that way. It was not necessarily presented, but it was never understood that way. Like I remember buying houses and it was like, oh, you have to give a 3%. They got 3% commission. And if they were feeling generous, they could knock 0.5% off or something like that. But it was never well known that is a negotiable percentage. And I think the NARS just kind of was like, you got to be more transparent. That was a quick summary. Obviously, there's a lot more, but that
was right on point.
Yeah.
Yep. That was it. Yes, it's always been negotiable, but it has not always been transparently communicated that way.
So now it has to be on the front side, like, hey, that's the fee. So, okay, so get educated, and there's lots of ways. It shouldn't just be your buddy that had like a bad experience, or just someone that had the perfect experience. It really needs to be you researching it. And where's the best place to go to research that?
Well, you can go to va.gov. There's a plethora of information. Huge amounts of information. And you can go to VA Rep, which is Veterans Association of Real Estate Professionals, and get in touch with somebody there. I'm on the Government Affairs Committee of the new Nashville chapter of VA Rep here in the Nashville area. We're just in our beginning stages, but we are comprised of veteran realtors and lenders and patriots. So there has to be a certain percentage of veterans involved in the board and in VA Rep as a whole, and patriots.
For state you're in, you should be able to find a rep for that. And
then just ask questions of your realtor and your lender.
Yeah.
What. Yeah, be curious. And you don't have to, grill them, but just ask, how many VA loans have you done in the past, and what sort of complications have you come across, and how did you manage them?
Those are
Just,
good questions.
just have that communication so you can kind of get a feel for, if they don't know the answer to the question, that's okay. But are they somebody who will delve into that for you on your behalf?
Bingo. If they're dumb questions, then it's just not somebody you probably should work with. But if they're like, yeah, quite sure, I want to give you the right answer, let me go look. Well, then there you go. There's a good person.
Yeah, it's okay if they don't know an answer to something, but if they will research it and absolutely find out for you, that's somebody that you want, because then in any other area in that transaction, if they don't feel sure about something, they're going to find out for you. They're going to be your true advocate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, what's the second one?
Okay. Number 2. Utilizing the VA benefits wisely. So, like with eligibility and entitlement. First of all, eligibility is based on your type and time of service. So basically, it just tells you, like when you're working with a lender and saying, hey, I'm a veteran, I want to buy a home. The first couple of things they're going to ask of you is, do you have a DD 214 if you're out of the service? And do you have your eligibility? Do you know what your eligibility is? And if you don't, you can find that out too, va.gov.
What does it mean?
And I can...
Eligibility for a loan or for...
Yes, eligibility for the loan. It's based on your type and time of service. Just verifying that you're eligible to have that loan, to get a VA loan.
Who would be somebody that wouldn't be eligible potentially?
So in terms of the Guard, there's so many different. So if you are active duty, obviously you're eligible. You have to be in the Guard, I believe, for reserves in the Guard. You have to have 6 years of service. You have to have an honorable discharge.
And an honorable, or
if you have other than honorable, I think there needs to be some research into why that was and what the reason was. I think I have heard of ways that you can address that in terms of what type of discharge that was. And you can have VA foreclosures in the past. That does not prevent you from getting another one in the future. That's important to know. You do have to take, the required steps to increase your credit and clear up that foreclosure. But instead of having up to 4 years before you can, get another loan, like is typical for veterans, it's closer to 2 years.
Oh, there you go.
So yeah, the outlook is much better even if you did foreclose on a loan. Cool. Then the next one is entitlement. So entitlement is based on whether you currently have a VA loan or not. And there's all kinds of calculations on how much entitlement you have in order to have a VA loan. So another misconception is that you cannot have 2 VA loans at the same time. You can have more than one. It just depends on how much entitlement you have wrapped up into like that first loan. So all kinds of rabbit holes that you can go down into. Yeah. And one other important myth is that there is a maximum loan limit for the VA loan. There is no loan limit for the VA. Now, there might be a loan limit with the loan company that you're working with based on your finances and your credit score and all that good stuff, too. But you're not boxed into just a certain price range just because you're using a VA loan.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So you can go McMansion. Okay.
You can. Yeah. You just got to work for it. So third one is understanding the market. And so that's a big one too. And again, get help from a good realtor who's going to do the research for you and ask you questions. So whenever somebody asks me, hey, is it a good time to buy or sell my house? I don't have a direct, easy answer for you because I'm going to come back at you with some questions. What are your finances like right now? Do you feel really comfortable with your financial arrangement right now? Do you feel comfortable spending the time to look at another home, to for a different kind of mortgage because we have different looking interest rates right now. So that's going to look different for you than it was 10, 15 years ago, maybe when you first bought your house that you're currently in. I'm going to ask you, how long do you plan on living into this new house? If it's only for a couple years, then I'm going to recommend you look for a different type of house in specific kind of areas versus, hey, this is my forever home and we're staying there and we're not moving again. That's the plan. Yeah. It makes a huge difference. And just time of year makes a big difference. Springtime, there's usually a whole lot of houses out on the market. So there's a lot more to choose from. At the same time, those prices of those homes might be a little bit higher because everybody is looking for a home. And typically in the springtime, it's a really big time for people to be moving. They want to move before their kids have to go back into school. Yeah, so like late spring is pretty busy. So if you're not dependent on having to move for a specific timeline, and you don't want to have to necessarily compete with other buyers, maybe it would be better for you to wait for a different season and just kind of look at the housing market and find out how many homes are available. There's so many different variables and factors.
And I'm going to add, because I had an incident happen. So this wasn't on a buy, but it was actually on a sell. We were selling our house. And it's right when the market tanked, it really went in Arkansas, North Little Rock at the time. So we opted not to sell. So we moved, and now we have two houses. So we're renting one, and we have our house here in Texas, right? And then we hit a point that the people were moving, and we decided we want to sell. We really don't want to have a house in another state, and it's just a pain in the butt. The place that was doing our property management had first dibs, and they were selling our house. That house sat for a year. And I remember saying to my husband, I'm like, I'm just not feeling it with this real estate agent. Like, she's really nice, but she's not on point. But I was letting him handle it because too many chiefs is just not a good thing, right? Handling that. Anyways, they end up closing. The place is going to close. The owner's retiring. And so she's moving somewhere else. And she says, I'm moving, but I can't tell you where because it's, whatever. And said, if when I pop up again, I'd love to have you. And I told my husband, I'm like, that's our exit out. I went to our old real estate agent. I said, we need help. This has been on the market forever. She takes one of her proteges, puts her on it, had the house sold in 3 weeks. Why? Because we were out of comps. And the lady just felt she was giving us this good price, and it was out of comps. And they were with us. They're like, look, this is what your house is worth. Based on us right now, the market went upside down. It came back up. You're dead even. And if you're going to sell, we only had to drop it by $5,000. And let me tell you, that bought our house was actually a person that was looking at our house before. And she put down any negotiating price. She was like, oh, that's too high. And if she $5,000, that was it. And it sold in 3 weeks. So it goes back to that real estate agent and that relationship you had with them. And really, did they understand?
Yeah. So when you called that real estate agent, said, hey, we want to sell our rental property, did that agent ask you any questions?
There wasn't a lot. There was not a lot of conversation. They were a real estate agent that did property management too. And then first dibs on it for 6 months. And when she finally moved, I'm like, we're out, we're gone. So yeah, it was almost a year. I don't think it was quite a year before. But when the other people came in 3 weeks later, it was sold. 3 weeks. So wish we would have had more knowledge to ask more questions because we didn't. I mean, now it was different. But we didn't have that knowledge. So again, listen to these tips that Elizabeth given.
Yeah, it's really important to ask questions. And, if it's hard to ask questions if you don't know what questions to ask. You don't know what you don't know. And so when you're talking with a real estate agent, whether you're buying a house, whether you're selling your house, if you don't know what to ask, then ask the realtor, what do you think I should know about this process? That's the question you should ask. And then tell me what I need to know about this entire process of selling my home. And if they just come back and say, don't worry, I've got it taken care of, I'll handle everything and it'll sell really quick. No, that doesn't cut it. They need to explain how they get those comps for your house in order to come at a price that they recommend. Yeah. And again, they're recommending this price. You are the seller and owner of that home. It's your final decision what you want to list your home for. That realtor is not telling you what you have to do. They're using their expert knowledge and recommending a price point for you based on a variety of factors on how quickly do you need to move this house. You might want to price it a little bit lower if you're in a position where you've got to get it moving and out from under you, as opposed to you're just wanting to sell it just because, and you don't necessarily need to sell it by any certain time. You're not concerned about that. You don't need to get into another house or sell that one to get into another one. That makes a difference too on how you're going to price your home. So there's so many different variables that your realtor needs to really walk you through what that looks like. Yeah. Why you're pricing it the way you are, and just to have that open conversation. Yeah. Okay. Number 4. Choosing the right realtor. So, back to just a realtor who understands at least the basics of a VA loan and works with a good lender who knows the VA loan and has great communication with that lender. If a realtor says, hey, I have a great lender, they know all about the VA loan, and this is who I recommend. Again, you don't have to use that lender. You can use whoever you want. Lots of realtors have, partnerships with lenders. They have really good relationship. They communicate well. They know how each other works. So, there's a lot of those relationships and partnerships. But as a client, you need to know that you can use whoever you want. Mm-hmm. You're not locked into having to use those people that the realtor recommends, first of all. So I do usually recommend, a couple different lenders or home inspectors, title companies, because in the end, it's your decision, but right. I'll tell you why I recommend them. But that communication with the realtor and the lender is so important, because if I just hand you off and then I don't even talk to that lender throughout the entire process, that can really mess things up along the way. Because let's say we go see a home and I don't take a look around the home and make note of whether there were GFI outlets by the kitchen sink, for example, or even covers on the outlets, or on electric boxes in the attic. There's no cover. A fire hazard. If the realtor's looking out for those and maybe sees a couple of those things, but doesn't mention it to the lender, they don't have that communication, doesn't even think about it, well, then that lender is going to send an appraiser out to appraise the home for the loan. And the appraiser is going to be like, well, there's no covers on these outlets, and there's rotted wood over here, and I think there's some lead-based paint exposed or something. And then that stalls the loan. They're going to have those things fixed. The realtor's going to have to talk to the listing agent about whether they're going to pay to have those things fixed after you're halfway into the process. Mm-hmm. And people are probably going to be nervous, frustrated, and then the appraiser is going to have to come back once those things are fixed, and that's an additional cost. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is for communication all the way around.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
We're on number 5 now. Home inspections and appraisals. We touched about that a little bit.
Sliding right into the next one.
I know, we just did. We went right into that. So it's just basically there's a need to put a veteran in a better situation than they were before. So, the VA is not going to back a loan on a home that is shabby, right. That doesn't have heating and cooling. It doesn't have, basic safe necessities, electrical work being up to code, things like that. So those little things, I think, some realtors get hung up on because the VA requires some of those things, but those are not like putting electrical covers on outlets. Like that's $1 a piece, you know. It's not a big deal. And rotted wood, yeah, if the whole deck is falling apart, that's a concern for anybody, not just for a veteran in their VA loan. Somebody else should be pretty concerned about that too. If it's a rotted board here and there, that's not difficult to replace a rotted board here and there. Just do it on the front end, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, on what's bad and what's necessary. Yeah.
Yeah, good real estate agents will look at the home that they are listing for their client and give them realistic expectations on what to expect when buyers come to look at their home. That's a difficult conversation to have sometimes with an owner of a home because they've lived there. Most of the time they love their house. Sometimes they hate it, but most of the time they love their house. They have memories with their house. And often they feel like it's worth more than it might be.
I want to think that.
I mean, everybody wants to make money on their house.
Right.
Tons and tons of money on their house. But when it comes right down to it, it's the market that tells you what your house is worth. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So it's your realtor's job to give you that clear expectation of what the current market is, and just taking a look at your house and just saying very frankly, without emotional judgment or anything, but okay, here's what buyers might point out about your house. Here's what I recommend you repairing, fixing, whatever, to get the most out of your home. Because that's really what they are wanting to do for you, is help you get the most for your home.
An inspector have the same kind of thought process with that. The good inspector should be able to communicate clearly, like, these are egregious things like concern, and these are easily fixable that shouldn't affect.
Yes, and good home inspectors will do that. They'll point out. I mean, every single home inspection I've seen, everybody has a wiggly toilet somewhere. That's not a big issue. You can fix that fairly easily. Just about every house has some kind of wiggly toilet. It's not something to freak out about. But that's another thing, is just having that conversation with your buyer when the home inspection comes back, especially first-time home buyers. I mean, that's a lot of information that comes back on a home. It gets very overwhelming. And a good home inspector is going to point out every tiny little thing. And they're usually like 50 pages long. It's insane. So it can be
probably your biggest purchase to date, your first home, right? Is probably like, that's a lot of money that's going somewhere. So yeah, I remember the first time we were very stressed out.
Yeah, and you see that report, you're like, oh my God, this house is crap, because it has 50 pages. But most of those things, in any kind of house who's had some years on it, they're going to be minor things like that. And that doesn't affect the integrity of the house or that you have to be super worried about. But the realtor can help you identify what things you might want to focus on. And certainly the home inspector can have that conversation too. I've had home inspectors, my clients will meet them at the end of the inspection and just go through it briefly. And that home inspector can, be very frank, like, this is not a big deal. This is not a big deal. I'd look maybe further into this and give you some perspective.
Yeah. Your foundation looks at the Grand Canyon. That's a concern.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing is with foundations. I mean, so a lot of times you'll find cracks in the sidewalk or in the garage floor, or a little minor crack in a wall or something like that. And people will immediately see that crack and go, oh no, the foundation's terrible. You got to walk away from this house. Those are very, very normal things to happen. A normal settlement, it does not mean that the foundation is bad or that anything active is happening. You want to have your home inspector check it out and give you some advice. And, it depends on the size of the crack and where it is, for sure. And sometimes it's just cosmetic and it has nothing to do with the foundation. But I feel like when somebody brings like their mom and dad walking through the house, and maybe they bought their house 40 years ago or something. I don't know whether it was foundations were worse back then or what. But, they might see a crack. Oh no, the foundation's bad. It's not necessarily the case.
Yeah. All right, number 6.
All right, negotiating repairs and closing costs. So basically, when you get your home inspection report back, take a look at it, take a breath, and identify some of the things that are important to you, and have your talk with your realtor about balancing out what you're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
If your offer on the home was $20,000 under asking price, and then now you're going to ask them to completely replace the HVAC unit, the seller's probably not going to be too excited about agreeing to that. So you've got to balance all those things, what you're offering, first of all, what you're maybe agreeing to pay for in terms of closing costs or title, versus asking them to make some repairs and how much those repairs are. So negotiation is a lovely little dance between the buying agent and the selling agent on behalf of their clients. Because of course they want to do what's best for their clients, but at the same time, everybody wants a successful end result, which is closing on the home. So it's making sure that everybody feels like it's fair, and that they are getting, financially, they are having a fair transaction.
I think a lawyer told me this one time, and I thought that makes sense. So, like coming to the table, so like mediation kind of type thing. So, like the goal is that nobody gets everything they want, but everybody gets something that they want. Like,
Absolutely. And the majority of agents that I have worked with also have that mindset. They understand that it's a give and take, and that's how everybody should work together in a really good relationship, because again, everybody's in it for the same end result. Everybody's happy when there's a successful closing.
Yeah, exactly. All right, what do we got?
Okay, home stretch. Understanding homeowners insurance. Yeah, that's a whole realm. Essentially, with that, shop around. You don't have to stick with the same company that you currently have if you currently own a home. I mean, use that opportunity to shop around and compare other homeowner companies. It doesn't hurt to do that. It takes some time, which some people don't have, but it's worth taking that time. It really, really is, on the front end, because you might be saving yourself a whole lot of money. There are discounts for veterans, Geico, Farmers, and of course USAA. And when you're bundling things, you get discounts. So just basically on that one, make sure you shop around, and make sure you're asking questions so that you're getting an apples to apples comparison across each company.
Good point. Like, I actually learned this. My friend's house, lightning strike, burnt to the ground. Literally acted. The only thing that was standing was the brick that burnt to the ground. Anyways, I learned while she was going through this, and the replacement cost versus full value. And so when you say compare apples, know what you're paying for. So in that case, they had paid extra on their insurance for full replacement cost versus the value replacement cost, which
big difference.
Yeah, because it devalues. So I'm making up, the stove that you buy, you pay $1,000 for, and it's depreciated, and now it's worth $500, and that's what the insurance company is going to pay you, versus the replacement, full value replacement cost. And so now they got the $1,000 to go get that stove, that kind of thing.
Right. And building materials. Yeah. Building material prices have gone way up.
Yes. Yeah, actually, somebody just said, I was just having a conversation. I might have misheard it, but they asked the insurance company how much it costs to build a house ground up. And they gave some astronomical number, like $900,000. And I was like, oh my God. If this was a specific location, there was some context missing around that I was like, whew, I just remember the number. Dang. But it's a good point. Like, understand what you're asking write the list of what does that homeowner's insurance cover, and value, know what you're talking about. Like I was a full grown adult. This was only like 10 years ago. And I hear that and I went, oh my gosh, like I didn't know what our insurance had. We had to go back and look.
Yeah, it's another case of you got to ask questions, but again, you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly right.
With insurance and all the lingo and everything. So again, just, call and speak to a couple different agencies. You're going to want to know, like, and trust your insurance agent too, and have a good relationship there, because you need to contact them. You got to know that they're going to be there for you.
Yeah.
And just ask them, what do I need to know? What's important for me to know about insurance? And, if they give you a one sentence answer, you're probably going to want to move on. They're not going to be completely transparent with you or give you the information that you don't know you need. But absolutely, you got to compare apples to apples, because if one insurance agent tells you just about replacement cost and the other one gives you the price of homeowners insurance for something totally different, well, how can you compare that? You can't. It sounds more expensive than the other, and that's it. Next one is community resources for veterans. Every community is different, but at least in the Middle Tennessee area, we've just got tons of organizations and nonprofits and resources for our veterans. It's fantastic. So just start talking to other people. No matter where you live, start looking for other veterans. Veterans can usually point out other veterans no matter where they are.
Well, that conversation, I just found out, actually, I'll be interviewing them this week. We have the Texas Veteran Land Board. I just went and spoke to their group, I don't know, a month or so ago. And, we went to lunch. They were like, so what do you know about the land board? I said, I know a little bit, and we were all talking. I was blown away at what they do. And you can buy a house through the Veteran Land Board. You can buy land through the Veteran Land Board. You can get your house rented through the Veteran Land Board. This through bonds, and they reduced the price tag significantly. It's like, holy cow, really? So really look around. There is, USDA had no idea that they have tons of grants for people farming, and they will literally come out and do a land assessment for you to see if what you want to grow or raise or whatever is the right thing for that land, for that environment. Oh yeah, if I could get Ram on, I would, but he's like literally busy going from state to state to state. I can never catch him. He's so busy going state to state. They have a military liaison for the USDA that is specific for this. Someday I'll nab him, but I get a belt somewhere. But yeah, and again, you've said it. You don't know what you don't know. So the best you can do is just start searching and utilize your resources. Chat, GBT, AI, put in the question.
Yeah, no joke. It's an excellent way to start. Yeah, if you're a member of VFW, that's just resources right there. American Legion. If you're involved in just veteran-supported organizations and nonprofits, somebody's going to know. Yeah. Here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, at MTSU, we've got a Charlie Daniels Center, which is for veterans, and you don't have to be a student at MTSU to benefit from their resources there. FYI, you can ask anybody there. There's really so many opportunities for information. You just have to throw a stone, and somebody will know somebody or an organization that they can point you to. You just have to ask and start talking about it, really. So things that, not just for veterans, but everybody, a big part of homeownership is that routine maintenance. So just understanding that there is a continued financial investment in that home, because you're going to have to keep it up and maintain it. You're going to probably maybe paint the house. If it's not brick outside, you might need to regularly paint it. You're going to have to take care of the outside landscaping. You might want to paint the inside to spruce it up. You might have to update your HVAC system at some point, depending on how old it is. There's ongoing repairs that are financial investments when you purchase the house. So when you purchase the house, you're not just done, like throw your hands up, don't have to worry about it again.
Right.
You do have to keep in mind to set aside some money for those ongoing repairs to make sure you take care of that huge investment that you've got.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to spend all that money and just have it start falling apart. And then when you sell it, then you have this huge amount that you might have to invest in to be able to sell it well. So yeah, just planning for that resale. And again, that goes back to what your individual situation is. You might be in that home for just a year. And so that's going to make a difference on what kind of house on the front end that you're getting. You've got a good real estate agent working with you, as opposed to, hey, this is our forever home. That'll make a big difference. Yeah. And then finally, number 10 is navigating the emotional aspects of home ownership. So when you've got a seller who is very strongly emotionally connected to their home and has maybe unrealistic expectations of what they could sell it for based on just, how attached they are to their home, how much they love it. And yes, they probably put a great deal of money into that home. Maybe they've done some renovations, but the realtor needs to, again, manage those expectations, because let's say you invest $20,000 into a kitchen renovation. That doesn't mean you're going to get $20,000 back 10 years later. It's still going to be a 10-year-old kitchen by then. It's certainly much better than it was, but you're not going to get all of that $20,000 back. And part of that is, hey, were you just happy with that kitchen for the past 10 years than you were when it first started out, when it was all dilapidated and looking nasty? Mm-hmm. Part of that too is just, are you happy in your home? And because you spend a lot of time in your home. That's where memories happen. It's where your life happens. You gotta be happy with your home. So somebody else coming in might not like your same tastes. And that doesn't mean anything negative about you personally. It just means they have totally different tastes. And that's a big thing that I've learned in working with various types of people, is everybody has vastly different ideas of what makes a home and what makes a good home.
It's funny you say that, because I actually had a friend of mine who's a real estate agent came in our house, and we were looking at do some upgrades to the kitchen, and she was kind of giving like her insight. She knew the area, she knew the houses, stuff like that. And she basically was like, if you're doing it for you, that's totally fine. She goes, houses around here, like, it's weird. She goes, but they don't even upgrade them and they're selling. Like at the time it was like the 1990s scallop sinks and whatever. And I still have some. I'm gonna get rid of those. But they were still selling. She's like, it's weird, but there was no need. And she said, I was saying, we were talking about doing countertops. She's like, do not go with granite or any of that. She goes, it's not gonna hold.
You won't get your money back.
Yeah, you're not gonna get your money back on it. And I was like, oh, and that's a good real estate agent. It's just like, if you are in love with granite and you think you're gonna stay in this house forever, then by all means. But if you just upgrade, like for us, it's probably not our forever home, but if we're upgrading that kitchen, it has to be a balance between what we like and getting our money back in that resale. So if I go in purple cement countertops,
you better love them.
So
or know that once you do sell your home, you're probably going to have to pay to replace them. Yeah. And if it's, if you absolutely hate whatever countertop you have in your kitchen and it just drives you crazy every day, then maybe it's worth spending that money so that you're happy in your home every day, and just understanding that you might not get all that money back or any of it, but if you love it, it's your home. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Well, I think we went for a while here. This is it's good tips, right? We say there's secrets because people don't put that on the front end of it. They don't tell you, take the emotion out. People like, oh yeah, no, it gets emotional. Emotions get high.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the stress and just, the finances, can just make people kind of lose their minds sometimes. And so realtors wear a lot of hats because a lot of real estate agents have been in different fields. Right.
Well, it was a pleasure having you on. This was really good. And I know that we actually are talking about doing more in the relation of the real estate agent and looking at their perspective, looking towards the veteran, what they need to know, what they should keep in mind when dealing with veterans, because there are some nuances in there. So that would be for another day. Is there any last things that you want to add before we wrap this up?
Just that if there's a veteran out there, no matter where you are, look for and ask around about realtors that other veterans have used, pros and cons about their experience, learn from their experience, ask questions. I'm in Middle Tennessee, but if anybody needs to have a referral of an agent somewhere else, I can look up and see who is a Homes for Heroes affiliate agent in your area, and I can call them ahead of time and kind of vet them for you. I've done that in the past for a couple clients where I couldn't serve them in my immediate area. So I vet the realtor on the other end because I want to make sure that I pass my clients on to somebody good, and I'm just not going to pick a name out of a hat and get the referral fee. I want to make sure that I'm sending them to somebody good. So I can look up who's a Homes for Hero affiliate so that they can get that thank you check back, and they have somebody who knows about the VA loan process. And then, as far as here in Middle Tennessee, look me up, Elizabeth Long with Fidelis Homes, powered by Exit, because Exit is very supportive of veterans and our first responders and teachers.
What's your website?
My website is fidelishomestn.com.
Perfect. And email address that people can...
Email address is elizabeth@fidelishomestn.com.
All right, everybody, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for listening. As you know, Beyond the Frontline is underneath a network of podcasts under Coming Home Well. And just for everybody's knowledge, we've actually recently moved to a new platform called podcast.co. It should not change your listening experience. We are still on all those platforms that you normally listen to, including TuneIn and Apple and, well, I'd say Google, but I think that's going away. Whatever you listen to podcasts on, you will find us there. Thanks for listening, and we hope you guys have a great week.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Frontline, a podcast of Coming Home Well. Join us every other Wednesday. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. Thanks again. And until all are home and all are well.